So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk to you about your strategic management presentations. Um, After much angst, I've reached a decision. I know a number of you have emailed me wanting to know exactly what I was going to require, and you wanted to get started on that. Well, I've intentionally waited here until the end because I really wanted to see how your grasp of the simulation went. And I think most everybody is doing fairly well on the simulation and learning stuff that they should be learning and doing stuff that they should be doing. So I decided, good news, I'm going to go easy on you guys. I know that most of you are working full time and you've got lives and you've got families and you're out away from Wichita Falls. So, in doing a presentation, what I'm going to do is a written presentation with some caveats, okay? So, as you know from the syllabus, the presentation is going to be due on Thursday, August the 6th. That's not going to change. It is a written presentation. What will change is that presentation is going to be due at noon, and I will take a quick look at the presentations on Thursday at noon, and based on what you turn in, I will ask you up to 3 questions. I will send the questions to the team via email, and if your team gets questions, I'm not saying that everybody will, but if your team gets questions because something is unclear in your presentation, then you'll have until midnight Thursday night to answer those questions via email. So at any rate, let me get started. I want to give you some do's and don'ts, okay? So as we start thinking about what we need to present, a good starting point is really the same questions that you asked as you debriefed in the simulation. This is a bad slide. There's no reason for you to provide applause. I don't know if you heard it on the slide transition or not, but obviously you won't be doing the transition. The reason I left that applause in there for the slide transition is that you should never do something like that in a professional presentation. That's just uncalled for. The second thing about this slide that makes it a bad slide is you don't need to tell me where you finished. Quite frankly, I know where you finished from the results, and you don't have to tell me that you finished in first place and all of that stuff. That's just gobbledygook. You're just taking up time, okay? So I don't need to see that. I don't need those types of fancy slide presentations, slide exchanges. That type of stuff doesn't help anything. And again, that's something from when you're doing the presentation. That was simply to say, something like that. You just don't try to jazz everything up. Present the information. This particular slide is a little bit confounding because if you're going to convey 2 pieces of information on a graph, you need to have at multiple axes. So on the left-hand side, you should have an axis that shows what the wholesale price was. On the right-hand axis over here, you should have a PQ rating, and you would convey that information with two lines, in this case, on a line graph. Don't worry about the terminology that says entry-level pricing, because this is an older presentation that dealt with what the simulation used to be, which was entry-level and professional quality digital cameras. So again, if you're going to convey 2 pieces of information, you need to have 2 lines and you need to have 2 axes conveying that information. Also, if you'll note in the bottom left-hand corner here, it starts with year 6. You took over management of the company in year 5 after year 5 was complete. So I want you to show me year 5's information and then show year 6 and so on and so forth, okay? This is another example of a bad slide. It shows entry-level market share in year 6 and multi-featured market share in year 6, and then it shows it at the end of the simulation. Again, this is really irrelevant because I know and you know that everybody had the same market share, and it should be year 5. Everybody started with the same market share, 16.67%. What's important is what you finished up with. And that's, in this particular case, they're showing that they were the market leader, first or second place on both the product lines. That's good information. But when you've got 4 pie charts on one slide, that's a lot of information to try to to ingest at one time. So be careful about putting too much information on your slides, and make sure that your reference point is appropriate, not year 6, year 5, okay? I don't like failures and successes on the same slide. It's not good to have that information there because I really don't know what I think about that slide. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? So I would say that your presentation probably could start like this. It's things we did wrong, things we did right, things that we could do differently, and things that we will do differently going forward. In other words, you start with the negatives of what you did wrong, and then later in the presentation you talk about the things that you did right, and then you talk about the things that you're going to do even better as you go forward, okay? So just be careful about trying to convey conflicting information. It's kind of like I mentioned to you about strategic management. Your strategy needs to be intentional, logical, consistent, right? If you're giving me conflicting information, good and bad, on the same slide, that's kind of a problem, okay? Lessons learned, you know, hopefully everybody learned to be proactive and adapt to the market and pricing, but you know, this is actually a decent slide because it's got just a very few words on it. I'll give you a word about how to prepare your slides in a bit, but you know, one thing that you don't want to do is to put too many words on a slide, because if you do, what happens is that people tend to take too much time reading the slides rather than watching you and engaging with you, okay? So best cost is not a term that we use in our strategic management. It is a term that is in the simulation itself, in the simulation proper. The term that we use is best value. Best cost strategy to provide a high-end camera at a competitive price. That really isn't any of the strategies that we even talked about, right? So make sure that you use the correct terminology. It would either be cost leadership, differentiation, integrated cost leadership, or integrated differentiation, depending on what you are. Generically, we know that integrated cost leadership and integrated differentiation are best value strategies, but that's not a best cost strategy. And think about it just from a conflicting standpoint. If you're providing a high-end camera, should that be at a best cost, or could you even do that at a best cost? So just be crystal clear in what you're telling us, okay? Again, this is another example of way too much information on one slide. You can see that they did do well here on the right axis, in that they've got PQ rating labeled over here, right on this side. They've got multiple lines there, but again, started with year 6 rather than starting with year 5. Okay, so just be cognizant that you need to start with year 5. Also, when you've got two graphs talking about two distinct product lines, you know, in this case the entry-level camera and the multi-feature camera, which would be entry-level would be your UAV, or excuse me, entry-level would be your AC camera, UAV drone. It would be best to have that information on separate slides rather than trying to pack it all onto one slide, okay? This is just hard down lazy. What they did here is they just absolutely snapped. They used the window snipping tool to snap an image out of the simulation. This comes directly from the Camera and Drone Journal, and it's highly inappropriate to do that, okay? Don't need that level of laziness in your simulation. This is a very good thing to tell me what role each of your teammates played in the company. Tell me your name, tell me the role that you played, tell me a little bit of your background. And again, you're going to do a written presentation, so when you have a slide like this, you're going to use the notes view in PowerPoint. I'll show you at the end of the presentation what I mean when I say that, okay? Vision, mission, a vision statement, a mission statement, those things are important because they help me to see what you're trying to accomplish with your strategy. However, these aren't your vision. These are questions, right? Tell me what your vision is. Tell me what your mission is. don't put questions up there because this does not accurately convey what the vision of the company is. Please don't snip one small section, because the obvious question here is what happened in years 6 through 9 and years 13 and 14 if this particular industry had 13 and 14. And then this is just hard down lazy over here. You've only got one piece of information on the right hand graph. Okay, if you're going to do a balance sheet, this is not the way that you would do it. The fundamental accounting equation, I mentioned it to you over and over and over again, is assets equals liabilities plus equity. So if you're going to do a bar chart for a balance sheet, the only thing that you really need to have on there is liabilities as part of a bar and equity as the other part of the bar, because liabilities plus equities equals assets. Okay, so I don't know how they got that mixed up here on this particular slide, but if you're going to do a bar chart to convey your balance sheet information, and I really don't know why you would want to do that, it would be a stacked bar chart with just one bar for each year, again, starting in year 5, running through the end of the simulation. Future strategy, maintain the leader position in the industry. That doesn't tell me whether you're the market leader or you're the cost leader. So you need to be a little more specific in that. Obviously, you need to tell me specifically what you're going to do if you are retained. Another example here of bad information being included in a presentation. Don't need to know your overall game to date score. You know, it just doesn't help me to make any decision about your quality. Overall cost. This slide is just honestly a hot mess. And they show year 5 here, but there's no data in year 5. The year 5 column, for want of a better word, is blank. All right, so what they're showing here is production cost per unit, where their company is the green line, the low cost producer is the red line, the average cost producer is the blue line. So they're showing that their costs are below average, and then in a couple of years they were the low cost producer. But I just don't know that this is the best way to show this information. Also, again, if you've got 2 product lines, 2 slides would be appropriate for that. Okay. Again, this is just another snip of a screenshot from the Camera and Drone Journal. This is just hard down lazy. And I want to give you a word about corporate social responsibility. As you're aware, in year 9, the World Council was given the award for corporate social responsibility. If the corporate social responsibility award is inconsistent with your strategy, it's really an award that you earn for giving away my money. Remember, I represent the shareholders. So if you won that award, you need to talk about how corporate social responsibility is a part of your strategy. And that would particularly apply if you were running an integrated differentiation strategy or the pure differentiation strategy. Okay? Then this is a good slide because it tells me what you did from the time you took over the company until the end of your tenure, or the end of what you did. Okay, not such a great improvement in performance over the 8-year period, but it does show me beginning point, how much was the company doing when we took over, ending point, how much is it doing now as I'm asking you for my job for the next few years. Okay, future plans. This is too many words, and there's also spurious capitalization in here. Why are green initiatives, energy efficiency programs capitalized? You know, be consistent. This is a written presentation, so I'm going to be grading you on the written presentation rubric. Okay. This goes way deeper than it needed to. I really honestly don't know what they're even trying to convey here. It's some type of sensitivity analysis that dives into weighted average cost of capital. And it seemed like to me, every time that I started talking about weighted average cost of capital to any class or to your class, people just kind of, their eyes glazed over. So at any rate, yeah, don't get this crazy because you can't convey this information in the presentation, okay? So things that you should do, you should tell your story. Every company has a story. You should tell me who your teammates are. Share your mission, vision, values, and how that ties back into the strategy. Don't use the term game. Don't use the term simulation. Talk about your tenure as the top management team. You are making an appeal to keep your job. Your appearance is irrelevant because this is just going to be a written presentation. But obviously, if you're giving a professional presentation, you need to look the part. Think of it this way. Every slide needs to be part of your story, and as such, it needs to earn its way into the presentation. If it doesn't contribute to your story, then that slide really shouldn't be there. Okay? Review the rubrics. There are three. There's a rubric for decision making. There's a rubric for written presentation, and then there's the rubric that I'll use to grade you. Okay? Things you shouldn't do. Don't play the blame game. Don't talk about having a recession. Don't talk about the market shrinking or anything like that. If you're doing a verbal presentation, you will not use note cards in the public in the future. Trust me on that, okay? Don't use the Globus charts or graphs. That's just lazy. Use the allotted time wisely. Don't fail to tell your story. What problems did you encounter? What lessons did you learn? And I think lessons learned is a much better term than failures, okay? When you're giving a presentation, don't talk to the screen. You don't talk over your co-presenters. You don't make factual misstatements. You don't refer to the world rankings. Rankings don't mean anything in this. You could say, hey, I'm the market leader, but what your board of directors is going to actually care about is what's the return on equity, what's the stock price, those types of things, okay? So this is the first rubric. This is for problem solving and decision making. Things that you need to do. You need to identify the problem, state the different facets of the problem, tell us what you're doing. You can take a look at these rubrics. The second one, these are in Globus. This is the written presentation rubric for the Dillard College of Business. I'll be assessing you on that. These two, GLG1 and GLG2, those are assessment rubrics that apply specifically for our assurance of learning for our AACSB accreditation. They're important, but they don't affect your grade, okay? This is the one that affects your grade, all right? This is in there. This is the presentation rubric, okay? This is what I'll give you your grade on, okay? If you have questions, email me or call me, text me. I'll be happy to give you feedback. I want to show you when I say notes view, what I'm talking about. So if we go into Globus and you do your view here, let's see, notes view, okay? What do you have there? You've got your slide up front, right, up top. Down here, what you're going to turn in from me is a script, okay? So if you were presenting the slide about tenure, you would write the script in here and say in this box exactly what you would say if you were making a presentation. When you turn in your presentation, I don't want a PowerPoint. I don't want a PPTX file. I want you to save this as a PDF, okay? And when you do that, you're going to use the notes view, okay? So when you do the notes view, it's going to have your slide up top and it's going to have your notes down at the bottom of the page. So I'm trying to get here to show you exactly what I'm talking about doing. Okay, options, let's see, cancel here. Let me cancel out of this. Let's see, file. I think probably the best way to do it is print, and then you do print layout notes pages, use PDF, and this will get you your slide up top and then your notes down bottom, okay? Let me just go in here. So this is where your script will go. I want you to see what this looks like, okay? So when we do save as, hang on, file, no, I'm sorry, not save as, print, And then as notes pages, you see here what you get. You're going to print that rascal using the PDF maker, and that will be the file that you'll upload in the Dropbox in D2L. Okay, remember your deadline on the presentation is going to be noon on Thursday. Okay, I'm going to review the presentations immediately. I've set aside the afternoon on Thursday afternoon to review your presentations. You might get questions back. If you get questions, you only have until midnight to answer those questions, okay? So at any rate, that's it for the presentation. I'll be happy to entertain your questions via text message or via phone call or via email if you'd like to, okay? All right, thanks so much.